Hello everyone, my name is Victoria and I'm a certified occupational therapy assistant. Today's video is going to be about reflexes. Starting with the first reflex that we're going to speak about is the moral reflex. The moral reflex, immigrants typically emerges at birth. The integration is usually integrates around 3 to 6 months of age, and if it is persistent beyond the expected integration period, it may indicate a neurological or developmental concern. Some of the implications, if retention of the moral reflex may affect the child's ability to self-regulate, leading to hypersensitivity, startle responses, and difficulties with attention and motor control. Implications, if integrated, the integration of moral reflex allows a child to develop more mature motor and sensory responses. As for testing, the moral reflex can be assessed by observing the infant's response to sudden change in head position or loud noises. Something important is that the moral reflex is important for survival and early protective responses. The next reflex is STNR, also known as symmetrical tonic neck reflex. So typically this emerges around 6 to 9 months of age. It usually integrates around 9 to 11 months of age. If it is persistent beyond the expected integration period, it may interfere with the child's ability to coordinate movement and maintain its balance. Retention of the STNR can lead to difficulties with crawling, creeping, transitioning between different positions, and integration of the STNR allows a child to develop more coordinated movements and better control of their body in various positions. As for testing, the STNR can be assessed by observing the child's response to changes in the neck position, such as flexion or extension. The STNR is important to develop for crawling, creeping, and later more complex movements. The next reflex is ATNR, also known as asymmetrical tonic neck reflex. This typically emerges around birth and presents around 4 to 6 months of age. It usually integrates around 4 to 6 months of age, and if it's persistent beyond the age it's expected to integrate period, it may interfere with the child's ability to coordinate movements on both sides of the body. Implications, if retained, retention of the ATNR can lead to difficulties with midline crossing, bilateral coordination, and fine motor skills. Integration of the ATNR allows a child to develop more symmetrical movements and coordinated use of both sides of extremities. As for testing, the ATNR can be assessed by observing. Next reflex that we're going to be speaking about is a plantar grasp reflex. This emerges at birth. The integration typically integrates around 9 to 12 months of age, and if it is persistent beyond the expected integration period, it might affect the child's ability to develop a mature grasp pattern and manipulate objects in their feet. Retention of the plantar grasp reflex can interfere with the child's ability to develop a stable standing posture and may impact their balance and working abilities. Integration of the plantar grasp reflex allows a child to develop a more refined and controlled use of their feet. As for testing, this could be tested by applying gentle pressure on the sole of the infant's foot and observing their response. The importance of the plantar grasp reflex is important for the initial stages of standing and walking. Lastly, the Babinski reflex. The Babinski reflex is present at birth. The integration is typically integrated around 12 to 18 months of age. If it is persistent beyond the expected integration period, it might indicate an underlying neurological issue. Retention of the Babinski reflex beyond infancy can be a sign of a neurological dysfunction and may affect the child's walking pattern or motor control. Integration of the Babinski reflex allows the child to develop a more mature walking pattern and better control of their foot movements. As for testing of the Babinski reflex can be tested by stroking the sole of an infant's foot with heel towards the toes to observing their response. The Babinski reflex is important for assessing the integrity of neurological systems, particularly the spinal cord and the brain. A way to help integrate the STNR is by placing the child on tummy time in order to promote their neck posture, their shoulders, and their head. You can also place interesting preferred items all around, and if it's a baby, maybe things that are colorful or some foods that they like in order for them to reach. Always do this cautiously and make sure that your child is in position that they cannot put anything in their mouth and they cannot digest anything small. This will help promote the STNR reflex. As for ATNR, you can place the infant on their back and also put interesting items for them to reach from side to side. So you can maybe put some musical instruments, some things that make a lot of loud noise on their right side, and then you could put some stuffed animals or some soft items that they may like on their left side. That way you can promote using bilateral coordination. As for plantar grasp reflex, one of my favorite activities to do is you could place some fun items on the floor and have the child barefoot start picking up items with their feet. This is exciting for them and it's something new and definitely helps with the promotion of plantar grasp reflex. Lastly, for the Babinski reflex, one of my favorite activities to do is a sensory pathway. During this pathway, you can add any household items you might have, such as grass, cotton balls, sand, or dirt, and provide different tactile textures for the child to walk on. This will help promote the Babinski reflex and will help stimulate their sensory receptors in their feet and promote a more controlled and coordinated walking pattern.
Here is an activity you can do in order to integrate ATNR. Having the patient holding the tray with extended arms while rotating their head and looking side to side. This activity will help the child integrate plantar reflex, having them placing the rings onto one foot and moving it on over to their other foot, placing it on the cones. This is an example of a sensory pathway, which I was explaining earlier in the video, in order to integrate Babinski reflex.